The day had started like any other. I left my daughter at home with my parents that morning before heading to work. They had offered to help watch her while I handled a few important meetings downtown. My daughter, Lila, was 6 years old. She had the kind of laugh that filled an entire room, and she loved sitting by the window with her coloring books while asking 100 questions about everything. "Will you be home before dinner?" she had asked as I grabbed my bag. "Yes," I promised, kneeling down to hug her. "I'll be back soon." My parents stood in the kitchen behind us. My mother smiled politely while my father read the newspaper, like he always did. Everything looked normal, completely normal. But when I returned home that evening, something felt wrong the moment I opened the front door. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Usually Lila would run toward me the second she heard the door open.
"Mom,"
she would shout, racing down the hallway with her small footsteps echoing through the house. But this time, nothing. I stepped inside slowly. "Lila," I called. No answer. I placed my bag on the table and walked into the living room. Empty. Her toys were still on the carpet where she had left them earlier. Her small pink backpack sat near the couch. But she wasn't there. My chest tightened. "Mom," I called toward the kitchen. My parents were sitting at the table. They looked calm. Almost strangely calm. "Where's Lila?" I asked. My mother folded her hands quietly. "She's not here." I frowned. "What do you mean she's not here?" My father slowly lowered his newspaper and looked at me. "We made a decision today." A strange feeling spread through my chest. "What decision?"
My mother spoke this time.
"It was for the best." "For the best," I repeated. "What are you talking about?" My father leaned back in his chair and sighed. "You've been struggling to raise her alone," he said. "We thought about it carefully." My heart began pounding. "Where is my daughter?" My mother looked directly at me, and then she said the words that made the entire world stop. "We gave her away." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "You what?" "To a family that can give her a better life," my father said calmly. The room felt like it was spinning. "You don't get a say in this," my mother added. "She deserves stability." My hands began shaking. "You had no right," I whispered. My father stood up slowly. "We already handled the paperwork." I stared at them, trying to understand what I had just heard. My daughter.
Gone.
And my parents were acting like it was a simple decision. But deep down, one thought kept repeating in my mind. They believed they had taken her away from me. What they didn't know was that the story was far from over. For a few seconds, I couldn't speak. The words my parents had just said echoed in my head again and again. "We gave her away." I stared at them, hoping almost desperately that this was some kind of misunderstanding. But their expressions didn't change. They looked calm.
"Certain."
As if they believed they had done the right thing. "You can't do that," I finally said, my voice shaking. My father crossed his arms. "We already did." My mother spoke gently, almost as if she were explaining something simple to a child. "You've been overwhelmed since the divorce," she said. "Raising Lila alone hasn't been easy for you." "That doesn't give you the right to take my daughter," I replied. My father shook his head. "We didn't take her. We found a family that can provide more stability." The room felt colder with every word. "What family?" I demanded. My parents exchanged a brief glance. Then my mother answered. "A couple who have been trying to adopt for years." My heart pounded harder. "You gave my child to strangers?" "They're not strangers," my father replied firmly. "They're good people." "Where is she?" I asked. My mother hesitated for the first time. "They left this afternoon." The air seemed to leave my lungs. "Left where?" My father looked toward the window. "They're driving to another city." My hands tightened into fists. "You had no authority to do this," I said. My father's voice remained steady. "She deserves a stable home." "She already has one." He shook his head slowly. "You've been struggling. We thought this would be better for everyone." I looked at the empty hallway behind them. Lila's drawings were still taped to the wall. Her small shoes still sat by the door. Every corner of the house reminded me she had been there just hours ago. And now my parents expected me to accept that she was gone. But something about their story didn't feel right. I walked past them into the living room. My daughter's backpack still lay on the couch. I picked it up slowly. Inside were her crayons, a small notebook, and the stuffed rabbit she carried everywhere. She would never leave without that toy. Never. I turned back toward my parents. If she left this afternoon, I said quietly, why are all her things still here? My parents didn't answer immediately. My mother looked down at the table. My father cleared his throat. They said they would buy her new things, he replied. But his voice didn't sound as confident as before. Something wasn't adding up. Then I noticed something else. A small envelope sitting near the edge of the kitchen table. It hadn't been there that morning. What's that? I asked. My father quickly placed his hand over it. Nothing important, but I had already seen the writing on the front. My daughter's name, Lila. My heart skipped. Why is her name on that envelope? My father hesitated, and in that moment I realized something important. They were hiding more than they had told me. I stepped closer to the table. Move your hand. My father didn't respond. Move it. Slowly, he lifted his hand. I picked up the envelope and opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, and the moment I read the first line, I understood that my parents had made a much bigger mistake than they realized. Because the paper wasn't adoption paperwork. It was a legal notice, and it clearly said one thing. They had no right to give my daughter away. The paper in my hands trembled slightly as I read it again. It was clear,
Direct.
and impossible to misunderstand. The document explained that no one except the legal guardian of a child could authorize an adoption or transfer of custody. And according to the records attached to the notice, that legal guardian was me. My parents had absolutely no authority to give Lila to anyone. I slowly lowered the paper and looked at them. You had no right to do this. My father shifted in his chair. We were trying to help. You weren't helping, I replied quietly. You were trying to control something that was never yours. My mother looked uneasy now, but we thought. You didn't think, I interrupted. You decided. The room had grown completely silent. The confidence they had shown earlier was fading. My father rubbed his forehead. They already left, he said. That doesn't matter. I grabbed my phone from the table. What are you doing? My mother asked. Fixing this. I stepped into the hallway and made the call. The woman on the other end answered quickly. Family Services Office. I need to report an unauthorized custody transfer, I said firmly. There was a brief pause. Can you explain what happened? I took a breath. My parents gave my daughter to another family without my permission. The voice on the phone immediately became serious. Do you know who the family is? Yes, because the envelope my parents had tried to hide contained more than just the legal notice. It also had a name.
And an address.
Within an hour, everything began moving quickly. Officials contacted the couple who had taken Lila. They were shocked when they learned the truth. My parents had told them a completely different story, that I had agreed to the arrangement but couldn't be present that day. The couple immediately cooperated. They had no intention of taking someone's child unfairly. By the time the evening ended, I was standing on the front porch of their house across town. The door opened slowly, and there she was. Lila ran toward me the moment she saw my face. Mom, I knelt down and wrapped my arms around her. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I simply held her close, feeling the warmth of her small hands around my neck. I missed you, she said. I missed you too. The couple who had taken her stood nearby, apologizing again and again. We truly believed the grandparents had permission, the woman explained. I know, I said gently. This wasn't your fault. A few minutes later, Lila and I were back in the car heading home. The streetlights glowed softly through the windshield as we drove through the quiet city. She sat in the passenger seat, holding her stuffed rabbit. "Are we going home?" she asked. "Yes," I said. And when we finally arrived, my parents were still waiting in the living room. They looked up the moment we walked inside. My father stood slowly. I didn't think. "No," I said calmly. "You didn't." Lila ran upstairs to her room while I remained standing in the doorway. My parents looked smaller somehow, less certain. "This will never happen again," I said. My father nodded silently, because now they understood something they hadn't before. Being grandparents didn't mean they had control. And being a mother meant I would never stop protecting my child. Not from strangers. Not from anyone. Not even from them.